Okay, y'all, this is B-Man First, aka B-Man 11, and we gonna get into Pat McAfee breaking his silence on his hiatus. And according to Pat McAfee says, I will not be commentating, continuing to just like catch up on life as whole. Now, that's his exact words, that broken English. I'm not doing that. I'm just reading exactly what he said. Post Money in the Bank, pre-Night of Champions feels like a good time. I was getting pretty exhausted there, and that was Pat McAfee on his hiatus from WWE. Now, commentating for WWE, especially when you're on these live shows and the travel schedule, a lot of people really can't handle it. Pat McAfee was one of those types of guys that, hey, I go into the same office every day. That's the type of time he was on. And, you had a couple of other commentators that couldn't really handle it. And Taz was one of them. Jim Ross, he gave sort of his input about Taz, saying, Taz, he was a good commentator, but he was kind of asking questions like, hey, when do we have off? And, asking stuff about vacation days and, all kind of other stuff. And, I think Taz did it for like a few years and then he had to quit. If it was a few years, it might have not even been a few years. I want to say it was a few years. It wasn't no crazy run like 10 years commentating or nothing like that. Commentating, you have to be a special kind of person to be able to do that. Can you be away from your family even longer than the wrestlers? And a lot of times it's just you commentating. You have people in your ear. You gotta know how to pronounce all the names and a lot of study work. You need to be well versed in, wrestling. I don't like commentators that really come from non-wrestling spaces because, some of the moves they just don't know. I don't understand Michael Cole though. Michael Cole has been with the WWE like going on 30 years. And, he act like he don't know what he doing. But, Pat McAfee, I'm not going to say I didn't like Pat McAfee. It was here or there. I think he did good. I think we could have gotten good things out of Pat McAfee in the long term. Honestly, he probably was going to be better than Michael Cole in like 5 years. Because Michael Cole still doesn't know the difference from shooting star press and a 450 splash. Bianca does a 450. And Michael Cole keeps saying shooting star. And I mean, is no one pointing that out? God, I wish somebody would just tweet Michael Cole and let him know, like, you're ruining the legacy of somebody. Like, imagine if Stone Cold does the stunner and Michael Cole keeps calling it the rock bottom. That's literally what Michael Cole is doing to Bianca. Like, come on, you cannot keep messing that up. You can't mess up someone's signature move calling it something else. But honestly, Michael Cole needs to be fired. I said it. And hopefully, Pat McAfee comes back. I would like to see Pat McAfee back. I'm not going to say I'm glad he's gone. But that's just what Pat McAfee said. Hopefully he comes back. You know, maybe he could do a contract where, you know, he's a part-time commentator or something if he can't handle it. But shout out to Pat McAfee. But that was just an update on him breaking his silence.